The forest is my sanctuary. My bike is my meditation. When the two meet, the rest of the world drifts away. All that matters is the present moment. The dirt beneath my tires, the compression of my suspension, my grip on the handlebars. This is called flow. Riders everywhere know it when they feel it. And when you discover a trail that elicits such a state, you hold on to it. And if you can't find one, you make one. This is the story of how one such trail came to be, and how it created a vibrant community in the process. This is Ribbon of Dirt, the story of the Hydrocut.
So I started riding 96, and when the Hydrocut was just the Hydrocut, it was literally just a trail that ran under the wires, right? So I'd ride out to St. Agatha and back.
There was a local club in Waterloo. I saw their ad years ago in 2000 and thought it'd be fun riding with friends and joined them, and it grew into an obsession.
I've been riding at the Hydrocut since the early 90s, and then I joined the Waterloo Cycling Club probably mid 90s, and we would ride several different trails. The Hydrocut was here, and there was a couple trails, and then there's trails on private land, and then we used to ride up and down the Hydro corridor as well.
Friend came here a lot, and it's like, hey, take me over to these trails. So he brought me in and I was hooked. And that's about 14 years ago, and I've been coming ever since. Day one I come in, and this was before signage, anything, like it was before the Hydrocut became huge.
We had a pretty tight group of about a dozen guys that would ride every Wednesday together and cycle through different trail systems locally between here and Guelph. And the Hydrocut was on the map, and I had heard of it, but I had never actually been out here at that point. And it was through riding with that group of guys in the mid-90s, that's when I got introduced to the Hydrocut.
We would all ride on Wednesday nights from the store here. We would ride out to the Hydrocut. At the time, it was just kind of literally a hydro corridor cut through the forest. And you would cut across literally a farmer's field, which sometimes was flooded and sometimes was tilled up. And you would kind of get yourself, whether you had to hike a bike or if you could ride across this farmer's field, and you'd kind of go through a hole in the fence, and literally you would ride the hydro corridor.
At that time, they were largely just the old cross-country multi-use trails, but run trails like Adams Run and Sweet Street were around in their infancy, lots of structures, things like that. So for the longest time, we'd ride Grand River Trail down towards Chicopee, Wilson Woods, different areas, and then quickly we realized what we had here, and about 97, I think, is when I really sort of steadily started riding out here.
It was very much kind of off the grid, kind of like a very hidden gem at the time.
Well, the first two trails that still exist are Adams Run and Sweet Street.
Over the years, young Adam, our co-op kid, started building out there a little bit. And in, I think it was 97 or 98, there was a teacher strike.
There was this student strike, teacher strike in 97 when a bunch of kids went in and built their own little trilling loop.
He went full on out there. He started building single tracks and building bridges and built up stuff. And that was kind of one of the original first real offshoots was Adams Run, and that was Adam Trotter.
He had it go through, crisscross through a little valley back and forth, and it was just a lot of fun. It wasn't dangerous, but it was fun and fast and sweeping. So it was just kind of unique.
A guy named Adam Trotter built Adams Run, and that was the first groundbreaking trail that stuck. Like, there were a lot of other trails that people tried to build, but they weren't very good, and they didn't last. They kind of disappeared from lack of use.
A year later, in 98, the Sweet Street, which was just a spontaneous, illegal trail at that time, and that kind of grew out of hand, and kids started building catwalks and crazy, dangerous stuff, and then the region couldn't have it.
About 2001, it became obvious that it was getting kind of dangerous out there. One of the neighboring owners, the gravel pit owner, caught a bunch of guys out in the back of his gravel pit with pickup trucks full of stolen construction lumber. So he kind of followed them and found out that they were building stuff in the trees and things like that. So he called the region, said you might want to do something about it. So shortly after I started, that was my job, go out, take a look, see what's there. And then I spent 2002 tearing everything out.
The good half of the original trail system was not built legally. We were just out there. In the beginning, we were so naive that we really didn't realize that we were trespassing, that we were offending landowners, and that we were on regional land without approval.
I think we referred to it as a Wild Wild West because there was a handful of guys that wanted to do like big drops, kind of like what you would see in the 90s out west, and you'd see someone like Wade Simmons or whatever doing these big drops out west, and they wanted to build that here. So the only way to build that stuff, you build it up really high. So I mentioned Sweet Street, and you'd ride through that ravine. Well, these guys built like a catwalk, and you know, your memory always blows things out of proportion, but I'm sure it was 7 to 10 feet high, and then these guys would ride up onto the catwalk and then drop into that ravine. So the transition was dropping into that ravine, and we used to sit there for 45 minutes and just watch these lunatics drop into the ravine. So they would just build whatever they want, and I think that's why it became the Wild Wild West.
Whenever anybody here had a day off that was then working at the cycle path, which this was the cycle path, we would head out there and hack away with Adam and try to make his vision a reality and see who could ride it. That was the other thing. You'd build this stuff and then somebody had to ride it, and like, yeah, who is going to have the balls to ride this stuff?
I was chairing the region's Environmental and Ecological Environmental Advisory Committee, EAC, back in 2002, and the trails it had, they were sort of out here not really legally on regional land, and the region had started hearing about accidents, kids were getting hurt, And they came out here and they found a bunch of the structures, and they were kind of concerned about that from in a lot of ways. Being an agreement forest, the pines in here were always meant to be logged. So as soon as you put nails and things into trees, it's a hazard for the logging crew, and all of a sudden the trees no longer have value. So the region was concerned from that perspective, because they did have a bit of an agreement with the Ministry of Natural Resources that eventually everything would be cut down. So I guess the early stages where the region really wanted to crack down and shut down the trails out here. And it came in front of EAC because it's also what's called an environmentally sensitive policy area. And EAC was responsible for maintaining activities in and around ESPAs. So the region, both from a liability of someone getting hurt and the financial liability of having trees with nails in them, realized that they were ready to put like really crack down on mountain bikers and basically kick them out, close the trails.
That's the stuff that got the region's attention out there, and that the precariousness maybe of some of the builds out there is what got the region's attention and what prompted them to get in contact with the Waterloo Cycling Club to remove some of that stuff.
The relationship with the region was something that started independent, and it was really just an idea that the advocacy committee of the cycling club came up with at the time.
I met with some of the cyclists, I met with some of the cycle shop owners, and we kind of came up with a plan. If the cycling community could demonstrate that they could cycle responsibly out here, then we would allow that, and we would look towards some sort of an agreement where the region wouldn't have to manage the trails, because we don't have parks and recreation as the region. Cities have that, but it's not the region's mandate. So we had no staff or anything to look after that. It was just me. So we kind of came up with this idea, and I don't remember who came up with it, but the idea was that if we can come up with some sort of an arrangement that the cycling community would have some assurance that they could keep using this area for cycling, that we would see how that would develop.
The club sort of pitched this idea of having some sort of working relationship with the region where we maintained the trails. I wasn't going to represent any more work for them. Kind of legitimize the trails out here and put some planning in on the trails and actually build a network that we could be proud of and that was sustainable.
So the committee is actually my creation. I created a monster, right? Ron and I, back then, we were obviously very driven, creatively driven. And the Hydrocut, I claim it couldn't be in its current form without him or I. It's our synergy is what was the starting catalyst. But then also we got into creative differences, right? He would do it certain way, I would do it certain way, right? So why is my word over his word? And we were really good friends, but we had this headbutting all the time, right? Well, why this way? Why that way, right? So then I kind of thought we need some legitimacy to whose word's gonna be, right? So we're obviously too subjective, so let's have an objective view and let's be more in a public service, not just our idea, right? So let's create this objective committee who would help us make decisions, right?
So in the beginning there was a vision. There were just a handful of us, Mark Walker, Brent Ellis, myself, and Igor Dragoslagov were the core four at first. And the original vision actually came from Gorba. So yeah, because Gorba had the stewardship agreement. They call it something else, with Grand River Conservation.
And the dawn of the new era, which at the time was a bit of a rocky transition, but here we are 15 years later, and it was all for the best. You know, it was all an important part of the history these days.
When I first joined the committee, it was a little more directed by one individual, and we've slowly changed into more of a collaborative group. which has been really good for us. It opened the door to build on what we have and then go next level and develop trails a little bit differently than what the Hydrocut had become known for.
Now, for sure, there's definitely more thought and care going into anything that's built out there. Having the trail committee, there's a process for kind of, people propose changes get discussed and reviewed. If we're, building, say, like a feature like Godzilla, we need approval from the land manager from the region. So there's definitely more of a process involved in building than what there used to be.
It's not just one person or one idea. We're all working together to come up with the best idea. So there's a committee of about 10 of us, and we build collaboratively. So we'll come out here, I'll have an idea, and then we'll do this, and then Clay and Ron and Jeff and Steve, we'll all come out as a group, and then we'll look at that, and someone will say, well, and then we start tweaking it. So as a group, we come up with a plan to build a trail, and then we let it sit for a while, and then we keep tweaking it until we're all happy with it.
So it's working together with everyone that's allowed this. Everybody's involved. People aren't just coming in and making trails and hoping nobody catches them, right? So yeah, it's the whole, everybody working together.
So from there, they started working on the stewardship agreement, getting that concept in place with the region.
The rules and the regulations that they said is never going to happen. They're just not going to allow it. It's too much liability. It's just impossible. You're never going to convince their lawyers to do it, right?
The region, we arranged a bunch of mountain bikers to come in from the cycling club, talk to the region at an EAC meeting. Had to dispel a number of rumors about what a mountain biker was. They had visions of all kinds of unsavory characters, but when they realized there's lawyers and doctors and engineers and professionals, and it was a group that was actually pretty presentable and actually pretty organized, those are the early days that we realized that the two groups could kind of work together.
Around 2001, and then Ron Donaldson talked to us and said, let's make a presentation to the region. And then so myself and Mark Walker made a presentation to this EAC committee, this Environmental and Ecological Advisory Committee, about mountain biking, about the Hydrocut, and then related articles about whether mountain biking would damage the forest and its impact on the forest. And then also we made our pitch about having established trails and only those established trails, and having a set of building standards, which is where IMBA came into, because a lot of the trails out here were heavily eroded, because we would go straight up a hill or straight down a hill, and then we'd have a mud puddle, and we'd just keep riding around it, so the mud puddle grew and grew and became a small pond. And then so we made a presentation, and then EAC made a recommendation to the region that we start a partnership. Then the Waterloo Cycling Club would look after the Hydrocut here.
Starting in 2004 or something like that, we started working out an agreement, and I said, if you can demonstrate this, then we'll see if we can't formalize it.
And the region seen value in developing a stewardship agreement with the WCC because it meant that we could build a trail system that would be attractive to mountain bikers and would draw the riders in our region to the Hydrocut and draw them away to other trail systems where impromptu trails are popping up and they were causing considerably forest damage, and the region was unhappy. And they were going on private land and so on. So for the region it was attractive because they could consolidate mountain bike riding in Waterloo region into one pocket of forest.
And then so I was involved with the Waterloo Cycling Club with the advocacy committee then. And then in 2003, we had a new president come on board, Rob Sutherland, and then I came onto the Waterloo Cycling Club board, so I was still on the advocacy committee, and I was on the board of directors, and I was the treasurer back then. And then so Rob Sutherland is a lawyer, and he did work with the region, and then so we started to work towards getting a formalized agreement.
Rob decided no, he's gonna get it done. So people were sure it's not gonna be possible, but Rob worked for years. That I don't know even how much it would cost to hire a lawyer, hours and hours of lawyer work, right? So Rob basically, from what I know, convinced the regional lawyers that they're actually protecting themselves better by condoning the trails and making sure they're built with the due diligence, and that's a better protection than to pretend they have no part of it.
And then it was 2003, June 2003, I think, is around the time that we pitched, or actually presented in writing, our stewardship agreement to the region. It took a while for it to, probably 3 or 4 years before it actually got signed, bounced back and forth, reviewed by legal.
And then so, you know, for the next 6 years, I volunteered out here. I did trail days, helped build stuff, and I was the treasurer. And then Rob Sutherland was the president, I think from 2003 to 2006. And he was working with the region still and local tourism people. And then he stayed on the board in 2006 to 2009. Chuck Hamill became the president.
And then by 2009, we had a stewardship agreement in place. We had our legal staff enter into this agreement with the Waterloo Cycling Club, and that's been governing us ever since.
So then that was Rob's magic to draft that agreement and to get the regional lawyers to sign it.
I mean, without Rob Sutherland and Chuck Hamill, we wouldn't have the stewardship agreement.
The Trail Committee has real credibility with them now. So from a trail building and maintenance perspective, the region is pretty much a hands-off.
We're the authority in these forests. We decide what happens out here. There's no rogue building, everything has to go through us. Shortcuts pop up, we shut it down if we don't approve it. Our group decides what goes on here, and people respect that because we've got the, I'll say the experience through years of working out here and working together with groups like IMBA to help us understand trail building. We're the source for what happens here.
I would have to credit Ron and Igor for you know, because they're both artists, and so they wanted it to be like a, what we call it, a ribbon of dirt now, but they wanted it to be fast and flowy, because there's a saying, you know, straight trails are boring trails. So the mindset became, let's build it as a flowing trail, like a ribbon in the dirt, and because, you know, flowing trails are a lot more fun than straight lines.
They used to call me back in the day the flow Nazi, right? Like, it's gotta have flow, right? It must have flow. I think flow is absolute necessity, right? That's what the mountain biking is flow. Without flow, you don't have a mountain bike trail. That's the #1 thing.
The flow is the entire trail, entire trail system. To have good trail flow, you have to anticipate what the rider is going to do. It should feel like skiing, where you're turning left, you're turning right, you're turning left, you're turning right, and your speed is consistent through the whole trail system on that particular trail. So if you throw something in that forces the rider to adjust to that pace that he's going to turns and so on, it'll throw off the flow. So it's all about consistency in the turns, the speed, anticipating the rider's braking, how fast he's going to come into a turn. You almost have to build a trail to control the rider. So the rider thinks that it's his riding to make this great. but it's actually, you've designed a trail, so when he gets to that obstacle or whatever, it has a certain feel, and he knows what to do without being told.
Well, one thing, aesthetically looks nice. Like Chuck Hamill, the club president who I mentioned earlier, he used to say, oh, the trail should be like a ribbon through the woods. It should be, right, like look like a flowing ribbon through the woods. The good trail actually should look like it wasn't built. It just spontaneously happened, right? It's just the right line, and it should be in sync with the woods. Like what I like the saying, I heard it somewhere, some trail builder came up with it. Like Michelangelo used to say, people ask him how did he come up with the sculpture he carved out of stone. He says, I didn't come up with it, I didn't think of it. The sculpture is already in a stone, I just revealed it. So trail builders, good ones at least, they say the trail is already there. You just gotta reveal it.
Like it flows. We've really paid attention to the flow of it. The guys that are out there digging really take pride in the flow of the trail and how it connects to the next trail and how this berm connects to that berm. And I think you can tell, when you go in there and ride, you can tell trails that were built 15 years ago versus trails that were built 10 years ago versus trails that are built now. There's a progression in the flow of the trail that you can really tell, I think.
We designed the trail specifically for fun and for flow, and we keep it maintained that way.
Controlling the braking is important to flow as well, because as a rider comes into an obstacle, you have to bring the rider into that obstacle at the right speed. So you either take the rider around a sharp turn, adjust the speed up a hill. Some way you need to manipulate how fast that rider's going, so when he hits the obstacle, the feature, he's going the right speed. He doesn't have to brake for it because he's already approached it at the right speed, because you've controlled how the rider's going to approach that by directing the trail. And if you don't do that, you bring him straight in with the wrong amount of speed or setup, he's leaning or his suspension is coming out of a rebound, that will feel like he doesn't have flow, because now he has to adjust. He has to brake, bring his bike up right, slow down, readjust. So that is also part of flow, is controlling the speed as the rider approaches any corner and obstacle feature. It is actually well known even across Canada. Even though they may not be able to ride it, they've heard about it. It has, and I think one of the reasons for that is the urban setting. Because it's so readily available to people coming in and out of the community, where it travels.
So since we started monitoring probably 5 years ago with our infrared trail counters, we've been logging each year since then, and we've seen the ridership jump every year. And as the sport's been growing and the awareness of these trails have been growing, it just keeps attracting more and more people each year.
We have trail counters, so we have about 40,000 users that come out and use these trails every year.
The region was astounded by the number of users out here. We couldn't differentiate cyclists from hikers, but we could show them these charts. And then we had a few days where we would set up a kiosk at the entrance at Glasgow, interview people, figure out where they were coming. This was before we put the trail counters on. And
I think it's popular because not only is it central and close to a fairly large urban center, but it's fairly well organized and easy to figure out. Being able to ride a trail fast and hard and not worry about someone coming the other way that you're going to smash into. And having the trails labeled and named with a difficulty ranking.
So always trying to strike that balance of having a little bit of everything for everyone. So we still have the fast and flowy sections because people still like the time trial. And we're still trying to We're now trying to build trails that are a little bit more aggressive, that has terrain, that will draw other riders or riders that ride bigger bikes and ride other places in Ontario where the trails are challenging. So we're trying to keep up with the times, so to speak. So we'll always build, I guess our philosophy is we're always going to try to build a little bit of something for everyone so we can keep everyone happy.
Now seeing a lot of people, new people coming out, and kids, a lot of women. When I first started riding, there was not very many women, like there was only maybe, I'm gonna say 3-4 of us that I would see on the trails back then. Now, yeah, I'm thinking it's pretty equal. Like you got an equal amount of men and women, and yeah, you come out on a weekend or whatever, and the kids that are coming out, you never saw that years ago, right? Like it's changed so much.
It's, yeah, definitely evolved. Like I think last year we had, in the spring, you know, between 15 and 20 women would come out to rides, whereas in the past we might have had, you know, 5 or 8 women come out to rides, and just a range of abilities, like from women who kill it at races, to women that it's, you know, that might be their first season biking, or yeah, they just want to go at a more casual pace. And it's, yeah, great to see that whole spectrum coming out and enjoying the trails.
People know they've heard about it wherever you are. You can be riding in Moab and all over, and they'll know, people know the Hydrocut, and that says a lot about everyone that's put time into it.
The biggest thing that the Hydrocut has going for it is the massive amount of volunteers and people who are keenly interested in developing and bettering the trails. Like that's definitely its key factor.
Everything we do is all volunteer. So, and we track all of our volunteer hours. So we spend, and I'd have to look it up, but we spend like 2,000 to 3,000 hours a year out here volunteering. So it's a ton of time.
Building a trail is only a fraction of the work. So when you build a trail and it takes you 40 hours, say, to build it, right? Well, that's when the work actually begins, when the 40 hours is over. Because after that, then there's the maintenance and removing trees, fixing mud holes. And within a very short number of years, you've far exceeded your 40 hours of building that you put into it.
The trail network wouldn't be what it is or be what it's going to become without the work of volunteers. So like the trail committee is all a volunteer committee. We have trail days where anyone in the community can come and help out.
For as long as I've been involved, we've had trail days where 4 people would show up, and that was a struggle to get people to show up. And now we can put out the word and fairly reliably have 30+ people. We've had trail days top 60 people, and that's just amazing that we can fairly easily get people to come out. They love their trails. They understand that putting their time in the dirt makes it happen. Without the volunteer hours, these trails wouldn't exist in the same format they are today. That's why they are what they are today. You know, our trail committee comes up with the ideas and the plans and orchestrate that, but it's the volunteer labor we get from the public that helps us really make it happen.
So the Hydrocut would never have reached the quality that it has without the volunteers. There's just no way a handful of guys could do what's been done there. I mean, yeah, you could build trails with a handful of guys, but the quality would not be there without the volunteers. There's too much man hours required to maintain and build trails to the standard that they are now.
And the feeling that you get when you've just built a new section of trail and some guy's just ridden it literally for the first time after it's only been around for 30 minutes or so, and the smiles from both the riders and the thumbs up that you get, and It's a really satisfying feeling for the volunteers too. It's like I've just built something that someone really appreciates.
And then you come back the next week or next day and you ride the trail and it's like, yeah, I worked on this, right? It's like, this is awesome.
The thing that's so important with having volunteers build the trails is that they have a vested interest in what the trail is going to be like. And so many times you go out to trail day and there's a certain kind of plan in place for how things are going to be laid out, but then someone new may kind of see something like spot a rock and think, oh, this would be cool to have in this spot, and next thing you know 10 people are moving a big boulder somewhere so that there can be a cool little jump or something fun. And it's because people ride the trails and have that passion to make them something that they want them to be, that they are what they are right now.
Because I think that's that whole ownership thing. If you're out here helping build the trails, you care more about what happens out here. And I think that's the best part. It's just not like 10 of us on the committee. We're not the ones, so we orchestrate everything and we put a lot of time in, but we're not the only ones building it. We might be supervising it and coming up with the ideas, but there's been thousands of people that have helped over the years to put these trails in.
Everybody thinks they own it, and they do. Nobody owns a Hydrocut. Everybody owns it, but nobody owns it. That is one of the key things to the Hydrocut, that everybody feels a sense of ownership to it, is what drives the volunteers. And sometimes it can actually be a source of friction because everyone feels that this is my trail system and don't mess with it, right? So, yeah. But in the end, it's that friction, that sense of ownership that in a way also makes us so great, because everybody wants to be so involved in it and they want to have a part of it. Everybody wants a say. And in the end, that's what makes it so good.
There is an evolution, and more and better things can be done. The danger is to accept the Hydrocut as perfect, as this is the best we can do. And I think it's just the beginning. It's already sounding like an old school, right? So there is an evolution. Let's not think this is a top, it's perfect. Like, I think there is a lot more room to grow.
One of our areas is that we wanted to work on is developing mountain bike culture. Because you go other places, well, even just in North America, and the whole city or town is totally behind cycling. It doesn't matter what kind of cycling, the whole city or town is geared towards that, and they generate huge tourism dollars, and it's just a way of life.
If you've got kind of a lifestyle that exists around it, local shops that cater to it, you've got a brewery that's a few kilometers away you can go to post-ride for a beer, and they serve a beer that's connected with the trails, and you can buy Hydrocut coffee from Contrabean, and it's all part of making mountain biking a part of your life day to day, and that's culture.
We're working with craft breweries like TWB. We're working with great restaurants like Taco Farm and Harmony and the whole Fat Sparrow group. And we're all trying to work together and really put mountain biking on the map.
I would like to turn the Hydrocut or the Waterloo region into a mountain biking destination, and have over 100 kilometers of trails, and have bike infrastructure leading out to the Hydrocut. Because we've talked to the City of Kitchener, City of Waterloo, Region of Waterloo, and try to get infrastructure leading people out here so they can ride out here, but then connect to other forests in the area and have a whole network of mountain bike trails, and just make this a huge tourist destination for mountain biking and cycling in general. Why can't we do it here? Why does it only have to be like out in BC or in Utah or wherever, you know, all these other places. You know, I go to North Carolina, why can they do it and we can't? Like, and the answer is we can do it here. It just takes the vision and the planning and the willpower to do it.
The next most important piece of our future is getting onto private land. We've basically tapped out the trail system, the land that we are currently in.
We used to dream, I'll say, that, you know, imagine if we could have 100 kilometers of trail out there. Well, at that time, I think we had 18 or 20. And now, then it was 26. Now it's 30. You know, soon to be 31 or 32. Well, with private land use agreements, I think it's certainly not limitless, but, you know, I think 100K is easily doable. I think Igor mapped a decade ago, Igor mapped out 100K of trails using the private land and such. So that's the real exciting stuff, is the private land.
So it's been more than 10 years since we've had trails on private lands, and now we've approached property owners and we've got the region's backing, and we've got credibility from 10 plus years of maintaining the trails out here, and the region sort of is sort of vouching for our credibility and saying that, yeah, you know, they maintain this trail system, and it's really, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but it's pretty easy from the region's perspective. Doesn't require any of their manpower really to maintain something that draws thousands of people a year onto public lands.
We're only limited by our own imagination of what can happen out here and the willpower to do it. Because I think we've done some incredible things out here. And I think the best is yet to come. So 2018 was a pretty monumental year for the Hydrocut because we've always been on regional land for all of our trails. And in 2018 we signed our first private land agreement, or a licensing agreement with a private landowner called Tri-City Materials to put trails onto their land in 2019. So we're going to be doing that in 2019, and that's going to add about 15% distance to our trails. And then we've also had another handshake agreement with another landowner. We're working on that second agreement this year and hope to get that finalized later in 2019, which will again add another 5 to 10% onto our trail system.
It's kind of funny, it sounds a little egotistical, maybe perhaps when I'm driving down the road and I see someone with a bike in their car. I see her going to the Hydrocut. I think, wow, I influenced that guy's life.
If there was no Hydrocut, I would have to buy a road bike and I would probably lose 30 pounds. But if there was no Hydrocut, I don't know, I wouldn't want to live in a town where there was no Hydrocut.
Yeah, like why are you involved with the Hydrocut? Well, because I am, because I want to be. It's just so simple for me. It's not complicated at all. This is just a integrated part of my life, and this is who I am.
So, okay, Ron and I are gonna meet on Saturday, build a bride. And I'm there, he's not there. I'm building, I'm just gonna build it myself. And then, through half day, I see Ron coming from the other end. We miscommunicated. He started from Frankenstein and I started from the bottom. So we kind of saw each other in the forest, and at that time, the bride has this weird jog from one direction, just kind of unnecessary jog over. Well, that's where we met, and we just had to connect our two different paths that weren't planned properly.
If the Hydrocut didn't exist, I probably wouldn't be mountain biking now.
I enjoyed the ride to the gym more than I enjoyed going to the gym, right? And then so And then I just enjoyed cycling in general, like I would cycle places or use a bike in general. And then so I guess it's just my love for cycling in general, and that's what, it's kind of hard to define, you know?
Great to see the amount of women coming out, and man, they're awesome. Like they're fast. It's like, and so a little note to the guys, hey guys, don't underestimate the women that are coming up behind you. You don't need to jump on your bike and go, because a lot of them are going to catch you.
Because you can be out here and run across deer and all kinds of animals and just be, as you said, you get out here and you can ride around, and whether you have 45 minutes or 2 hours, you can lose yourself really in the woods.
And to me, that's really been the really good thing about all of this is how the cycling community is sort of pitching in to make these trails or keep them sustainable.